Hi guys, I'm Monica. I welcome you all to my channel Aeroker. So welcome back to our journey of aerodynamics. In this video, we will be learning about energy conservation and how we can apply this energy conservation principle to fluid mechanics or the flow of air. So in our previous videos, we saw the conservation of mass, conservation of momentum. We applied these principles to the moving fluid, and also we saw if a momentum equation is applied to a practical body which is placed in a wind tunnel, and how we consider a control volume around it. This is what we saw in our previous videos. So this is the last physical principles. In our previous video, I told you that we have the three physical principles, the basic physical principles, which are the building blocks of aerodynamics, that is conservation of mass, Newton's second law, and the last one is energy conservation. So we reach to the last physical principle. Without any further delay, let's get started. Now, before directly diving into the derivation, let us move back a little to thermodynamics. And also, one more thing I would like to talk about here is, in case we consider an incompressible flow where the density is constant. So we had a discussion on this point, that the types of flows, that is density and how the density varies and what are the types of flows. So we had discussed about the types of flows, where we saw the variation of density and how the types of flow changes depends on the density variable. Now, when I say incompressible flow, that means my density is constant. So, in case of an incompressible flow, if I have continuity and momentum equation to analyze a flow field, that would be sufficient. The reason being, the primary variables are pressure and velocity. So, in order to get these flow properties or know these flow properties, we have two equations which are sufficient, that is continuity and momentum. But if I say that I want to consider a flow that is compressible, when I say compressible flow, it means my density is a variable. So when my density is variable, so I would need one more fundamental equation. This fundamental relation, what we are going to get, is known as the energy equation. Now, how we get this energy equation, and by considering what all parameters we obtain this energy equation, is what we are going to see. So, as I said, the physical principle that we are going to apply here is of energy conservation, which states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change from one form to another. Now, what we are going to do is, we will take this physical principle and apply it to a thermodynamic system. So, let me consider this is my thermodynamic system, which is covered by boundaries. So let us say this inside part, this is a system, and the one which is outside the system is known as surroundings, and this which is making a difference or separating the system and surroundings is called the boundary. So probably the students who might have studied thermodynamics must be pretty much aware of this terminology. What am I going to do is take this physical principle and apply to this thermodynamic system. Now, in this thermodynamic system, what we will consider is, there is a fixed amount of matter contained in this thermodynamic system, and it has a closed boundary. So, when there is matter inside this system, whatever the molecules and atoms that are there within the system are constantly in motion. It is not possible that the molecules and atoms are in a stationary condition. So when they are in some random motion continuously, they will for sure have some energy. Correct? They will contain certain amount of energy. Now, let us in order to simplify this, what we will say is my system is containing unit mass. That is, mass is unity, that is 1. And the energy which is contained by this system is denoted by the small letter E. And as I said, the outside is surroundings. Now what will I say? What shall we do over here? What am I going to do is add certain amount of incremental heat, or add some amount of heat, and let us say the amount of heat that I'm going to add to this system is denoted by delta Q. So this is the incremental amount of heat which I'm adding to the system. When I'm adding heat to the system, certainly there will be some work done on the system. And what will be this work done on the system denoted by? Delta W. So these are the three parameters I get. That is E, which is the internal energy or the energy contained in the system. Then delta Q, that is the heat added. And delta W, which is the work done on the system. Both heat and work, that is what the work is being done and the heat that is being added, both these are forms of energy. So when these are being done on the system or added to the system, what will happen to the energy inside the system? Certainly there will be a change in the system, and let us denote that change in the internal energy of the system as dE. Now when I apply our physical principle to this system and the changes that are happening in the system, I can write it in the mathematical form as the sum of heat added and work done is equal to the change in the internal energy of the system. So let us name it as equation 1. Now this equation 1 that we have got is nothing but our first law of thermodynamics, which we are going to apply to the control volume in order to obtain the energy equation. Now, before applying it to control volume, we have some considerations. And what are those considerations? Let us have a look. So, this is our control volume as we had considered in our previous two derivations, that is for continuity and momentum. So, this is our control volume, which is denoted by V, and the control surface denoted by S. This is the small elemental surface ds, and this is our small elemental volume dV. And we are going to consider the same approach over here, that is the control volume is fixed in space and the fluid is moving through it. So according to the equation that we have seen over here, delta Q plus delta W is equal to dE, that we are going to apply to this control volume. So what we are going to consider is, let us denote B1 as the rate of heat which is added to the fluid inside the control volume. So B1 is denoting the rate of the heat that is being added to the fluid inside the control volume from the surroundings. And what would be B2? B2 would be my rate of work done on the fluid inside the control volume, and B3 would be whatever the change in energy is happening inside the fluid inside the control volume when it is flowing through the control volume. So when I apply it to this principle, it would be something of this sort: B1 plus B2 is equal to B3. That is what we see here. B1 plus B2 is equal to B3. So this would be our equation 2. Now proceeding further in our derivation, initially let us consider the rate of heat transferred to or from the fluid. That is either heat which is transferred in the fluid or which is transferred outside to the surroundings from the fluid. Now we can see this transfer of heat as volumetric heating of the fluid inside the control volume, because it is absorbing the radiation which is in the surroundings. Or there can also be emission of radiation in case the fluid inside the control volume that we have considered is hot when compared to the surrounding fluid. For example, if I'm considering a combustion process, which usually we see in jet engines or any type of engines, when we say combustion process, in that case the temperature inside the control volume would be higher when compared to the surrounding temperature. In that case, what will happen? The heat transfer will be to the outside fluid. So in order to proceed, let us denote this volumetric rate of heat addition. Whatever heat is being added to the fluid inside the control volume, let that be denoted by Q dot. Now if I want to look at the units of this Q dot, that is rate of heat addition, you can write the units as joule per second kg. Consider the mass contained inside the small elemental volume. If we are considering, that would be rho dV, that is the mass contained inside the elemental volume. So to this mass, what would be the rate of heat addition? Can I write it as Q dot rho dV? So this would be my heat addition to this mass that is contained in this tiny fluid element, that is Q dot rho dV. For a fluid element we have considered. Now in order to apply it to the whole control volume, how do I write it? Over the whole control volume, if I have to write volumetric heating, the same thing, we have to apply the volume integral as we have done in our previous derivations. So it will be given by volume integral of Q dot rho dV. Let us say this is our equation 3. Now this rate of volumetric heating is in the control volume. So can I just substitute in our physical principle, that is the equation 2 that we have considered, or is there something we need to add over here? Is there something missing? Yes, certainly. We have not considered if the flow is viscous or inviscid. So in case I consider that my flow is a viscous flow, then there is a possibility that heat can be transferred into the control volume by means of thermal conduction. So this happens when my flow is viscous. One more source of heat addition to the control volume would be mass diffusion. So these are the two terms we encountered when we were studying the types of flow in our video, correct? So in order to consider the term in case my flow is viscous, let us denote the term the heat added due to viscous flow or viscous contributions would be Q dot viscous. So this would be the contribution of heat added to the control volume if my flow is viscous. Now I think we are completely done. So I can write the first term of my equation, that is B1, which is heat added to the control volume. So what would be this B term? Rate of volumetric heating, this equation 3 plus the viscous term. So we get it as volume integral of Q dot rho dV plus Q dot viscous. So one term we have achieved from our energy equation, right? Now proceeding to the second term. But before we proceed to the second term, which is about work done, there are some points we need to discuss, and that is the motion of a particle and the force acting on it. Now what does this has to do with the term work done over here? Let us have a look. Let us consider an object which is in motion and a force F is being exerted on it. The distance is measured from a particular origin O, R1, R2. So you can see here, initially the object is at time t, and then we see the object at time t plus delta t, which means with respect to time, after certain interval of time, the object is displaced through a distance dr. Now, by definition of work done, we know that work done can be defined as F dot dr. So can we write this as work done? Yes. Now if I want to write time rate of doing work, it would be nothing but F into dr by dt. So what is my dr by dt over here? That would be our velocity. So displacement with respect to time is velocity. So which means, can I write rate of doing work on moving body can be written as F into V, right? So this is the basic physics which all of us might have gone through, correct? So which means from this we can see that the rate of work done on a moving body is equal to the product of force and velocity. Back to our control volume. Here, as I said, this is our elemental area ds. So here we will consider this elemental area ds. Now on this elemental area, there is a pressure force acting on the surface of this elemental area, and it can be denoted as minus pds. The reason for this minus we had discussed in our previous videos, correct? What would be the rate of work done on that fluid which is passing through this elemental surface area? Can I write it as minus pds into v, right? That is nothing but the pressure force into velocity. If I want to represent this over the whole control volume, what would that be? It would be the surface integral of pds multiplied by dot product of v, that is dot product of pds and v. Let us say this is our equation 5. Keep having a note of your equations so that it will be helpful at the end. Now let us consider the elemental volume, that is our dv. So when I consider this elemental volume dv, there is one thing we need to recall over here. That is, we had denoted that small f is the body force per unit mass. When I say F is the body force per unit mass, if I want to write the rate of work done on this elemental volume, can I write it as rho F dV dot V? Correct? Because this is the body force, and when it is rate of work done, it is the product with velocity. If I want to denote this over the whole control volume, then we have the volume integral, and this would be our rho f dv dot d. So now I think we are done with our second term. We have the pressure force, we have the body force as well. Is there something that we are forgetting? Yes, certainly. One more consideration, that if my fluid is viscous, then in that case, what will be the body force acting on it, correct? Or will there be any body force? No. If the flow is viscous, the force that will be considered will be due to shear stress that is acting on the control surface, and that will also perform work on the fluid as it is passing through the control surface. Now let us denote this contribution of viscous flow as W dot viscous. Now I think we have our complete term of total rate of work done inside the fluid in the control volume which is moving. So it would be my pressure force, then the body force, and the viscous contribution. So this gives the second term of our equation. Now we are left with the third term, the last term, which will lead us to our final energy equation. Now in order to visualize this energy that is inside the control volume, we denoted, when we applied the physical principle to the first law, we denoted the energy contained by the matter as small e, correct, due to the random motion of atoms and molecules inside the system. But here what is happening? The control volume is constant, but the fluid inside is moving. That is, my system over here is a stationary system. On the contrary, my fluid is moving, correct, and which is moving with a velocity v. So when it is moving with a velocity v, what form of energy will the fluid have when it is moving through this control volume? That will be our kinetic energy, which is given by v square by 2. So this will be the kinetic energy per unit mass, which is given by v square by 2. So the energy per unit mass of the whole fluid which is moving inside this control volume, the energy per unit mass is given by E plus V square by 2. This is the total energy per unit mass. Remember this term, guys. This is total energy per unit mass. Now, when this mass is flowing into the control volume, it is obvious that it is going to bring certain total energy when it is entering the control volume, and when it leaves the control volume, it will be carrying a different amount of energy. Now, the elemental mass flow across ds, we can write it as rho v ds. So what would be the elemental flow of total energy? That would be the product of the mass flow and the total energy per unit mass, that is E plus V square by 2. If I have to write this as the net rate of flow of total energy across the control surface, then how can I write that? It would be the surface integral of this term, that is rho v ds E plus V square by 2. So consider this as our equation 8. I hope when you all are watching this video, you're keeping a track of equations, that is equation numbers. Now, we have got the total energy, rate of flow of total energy across the control surface, right? So we can substitute this in the energy equation and get our energy equation. Or is there something that we are missing, or we have missed out something? Yes, we have certainly missed out something. That is the consideration if the flow is unsteady. So what if my flow is unsteady? What will happen to the energy? How this unsteady flow or the quality of the flow being unsteady affects the energy? So what happens is, if the flow is unsteady, there will be a time rate of change of total energy inside the control volume due to the transient fluctuations, of the flow field variables. So because of this unsteady fluid, I can say that the total energy that is contained inside the elemental volume, I can write it as this. This is for the elemental volume. Now, when I am writing it for the whole control volume, it would be, so how can I now write my time rate of change of total energy inside the control volume? V. Note the difference, as in our previous two derivations I had told you, this dV is for the elemental volume and this is for the whole control volume. So the time rate of change of total energy inside the control volume due to these transient variations of flow field variables, I can write it as dou by dou t of the volume integral dV. Correct? This would be my equation 9. Now what is the term B3? That is change in internal energy. It would be the sum of these two equations. That is the total energy that is changing across the surface and inside the elemental volume or in the whole control volume due to transient fluctuation. So it would be B3 would be the sum of equations 8 and 9. So this would give me B3, which would be our equation 10. So when we substitute these terms B1, B2 and B3 that we had got in our derivation, this is what the final equation that we obtain, and this final equation that we have obtained over here is known as the energy equation. Now this energy equation is in integral form. So when I say an equation is in integral form, which means it is applicable to a wide area of region, that is maybe a control volume or any wide region that you are considering. But what if I want to apply it to a particular point in a space? How can I do that? We have seen this procedure as well, but before proceeding to that, we have 2 points to be discussed over here. Now, when I say energy, somewhere there might be potential energy also existing. So where this potential energy exists, is there potential energy anywhere existing in the fluid when it is moving through this control surface? Yes, this potential energy is usually obtained from the body force, or in the body force term, where the force of gravity is included in the term small f, as you can see here. But usually for the aerodynamic problems, what we do is, whatever the change in potential energy is taking place, we are usually neglecting those changes when it comes particularly to the aerodynamic problems. So moving on to the term, that is, if I want the equation, energy equation at a particular point or space, point in a space, what I have to do, the similar approach which we had done in continuity and momentum, that is applying the divergence theorem to the surface integrals and collecting all the terms inside the same volume and setting the integrand to 0. So this was what we had done. So this all we are going to apply to equation 11 and observe what is the equation that we will get. So after applying divergence and collecting all the integrals and setting the integrand to 0, this is the partial differential equation that we obtain. Now one difference you all have to note over here is between the V and the V that is over here inside, which represents the kinetic energy. So this velocity is a vector and this is the velocity which is indicated in the form of energy. And as you can see, we have got this Q viscous prime and W dot viscous prime, which show the contribution in terms of viscous flow, or when there is a viscous flow. So let us make some assumptions over here. And what happens to the equation if I make those assumptions? Let us have a look. For example, the first assumption that we make is my flow is steady. So for a steady state flow, what happens to this? Dou by dou t would be 0. The second assumption we make that the flow is inviscid. So when I say my flow is inviscid, automatically the viscous terms become 0. The third assumption, I say that my flow is adiabatic. So adiabatic flow is a flow where there is no heat addition, which means my Q dot becomes 0. The last assumption that we take over here is that there are no body forces. That is, F is equal to 0. So in this case, with all these assumptions, what happens to the above equation? Let us have a look. This above equation with all these assumptions reduces to this form. Let us say this is our equation 13. Now, similarly, what happens to the integral equation? I leave the task up to you. By applying all these assumptions, write down what happens to the equation in the integral form. Now, there are some more equations. When we say energy equation, there are some more considerations that we need to look at. What are those considerations? If my fluid that is flowing is a calorically perfect gas. Now, in that case, if my fluid is a calorically perfect gas, there is one equation. I can write energy in terms of CV and T. What would be your CV? CV is specific heat at constant volume. Now, if the system is such that I can use the perfect gas equation of state, which is given by P is equal to rho RT. So I have got the value of energy. Then if I know it is a perfect gas, if I know the density of the fluid and the temperature, I get the value of pressure as well, where R over here is a specific gas constant, right? Now these two equations, let us say this is equation 15 and 16. These two equations 15 and 16, the reason we have included them over here is just to round off our discussion with the energy equation and the fundamental equations of the fluid flow. So whenever you're analyzing a fluid flow, how it is flowing, what are the properties, so these are all the equations which come into picture, which you will be using when you're analyzing a fluid flow. So this brings us to an end of discussion of the governing equations of fluid flow. The reason I'm using the term governing equations of fluid flow, because these three fundamental equations, that is continuity, momentum and energy, govern the fluid flow. The fluid behavior is observed based on these three flows. So with this sentence, I wrap up our video over here. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned.